The wheel came off a mile past the creek crossing. I know because I found the wheel. It had rolled 20 feet into the grass and stopped against a rock like it had somewhere to be. The axle had sheared clean. Not old rot, not wear. Someone had half-cut it. I crouched there a long time looking at that cut, running my thumb along the flat edge of it. You don't mistake a saw cut for a break. They left her on purpose. She was still under the wagon when I found her. The box had come down on her legs, and she'd been there long enough that the flies had started their work on a gash at her temple. The 2 horses were gone. The trunk they'd packed was gone. Whoever did this had come back and taken what they wanted after she went down, and then they left again. I lifted the wagon box myself. She made no sound. That scared me more than if she'd screamed. I am Tonka Hongska. Long Bull, in your language, though most of the white men in that country called me something else or nothing at all. I had 42 winters behind me then. I had led men in battle. I had buried a wife and a son before their time, and I had kept going because that is what you do. I had signed papers I did not fully trust, and watched my people's world change in ways I could not stop. I was not a man who spent much feeling on the troubles of strangers. But I lifted that wagon. Her name was Eliza Pruett. She told me that on the 2nd day, when the fever had come and gone enough that she could speak in full sentences, she said it like she was reminding herself. Eliza Pruett, like the name was something to hold on to. Her legs worked. That was the first thing I needed to know. When I carried her to my horse and laid her over in front of me, she had cried out when her left leg moved, against the saddle, and I'd held it steady with my hand the whole ride back. It was broken below the knee. I had set bones before, but the hip and the spine were whole. She would walk again. She didn't know that yet. I brought her to my lodge. My sister Redleaf woman looked at me the way sisters do and said nothing, which meant she would help. She, the one who splinted the leg properly. She was the one who sat with the woman through the fever nights, cooling her face with a wet cloth and singing low. I did not do those things. I am telling you that plainly. I had camp to run. I had men who needed direction and an old dispute with a neighboring band that needed settling before it became something worse. Life does not stop for one woman with a broken leg found on a road. But I came back to the lodge each night, and each night I looked at her. She had gray eyes, not like smoke, more like the sky right before snow, when the light goes flat and even and the whole world gets quiet. Shh. I noticed the eyes before I noticed anything else about her face, which is backwards from how I usually notice things. I noticed the set of a jaw first, the way a person holds their shoulders. Whether their hands are still or working, jaw was set hard even in the fever. Her hands, when they weren't balled in the blanket, lay flat and open, like she'd decided, even half delirious, not to waste grip. She didn't cry much, my sister told me that. In all the fever nights, even when she called out in her sleep, she didn't weep. Red Leaf Woman said it with something like respect. On the 4th day she asked me who I was. I told her. She looked at me for a while. I don't know what she'd been told about Lakota men. I don't know what she expected, she said. You found me. Yes, you carried me here. Yes. She was quiet again. Then, why? Thought about the wheel, the saw cut, the empty road. Because no one else was going to, I said. That was all. She turned her tools toward the lodge wall, and I left her to it. She was stronger than she looked. Most people are, once you stop looking at them the way the world wants you to. The world had looked at Eliza Pruitt's and seen a femme traveling alone, which meant easy to take from. Husband had died the winter before. She told me this later, in pieces, the way people tell hard things, a little at a time over many evenings. He'd been a decent man, she said, quietly. Not the way you say it about someone you loved all the way through, the way you say it about someone you respected, and now miss, in the way you'd miss a good tool that got lost. She was going to her sister's place west of the river. She had a small amount of money sewed into the hem of her coat, and a set of pots and a Bible. and someone had known about the money. She thought it was the man who'd helped her load the wagon at the last settlement. She described him to me, how he'd watched her count coins to pay the liveryman. I knew who she meant. I knew the name and the face and the particular way that man watched women travel alone. I filed that away. I didn't tell her I filed it away. 3 weeks. That's how long it takes a clean break to hold weight. If the person is healthy and the bone sets right, and they don't push before it's ready. Eliza pushed. My sister scolded her. Eliza nodded politely and then pushed again. And Red Leaf Woman came and found me with a look on her face that was half frustration and half something else. Something approving that she'd never say out loud. I watched Eliza learn to put weight on it. She had a stick she'd made herself. She'd asked for a knife to shape it, and I'd handed her my own without thinking. My sister noticed, and I pretended not to see her notice. She carved the stick smooth, and got the grip right, and stood in the doorway of the lodge in the early morning and put her weight on that leg, and I could see, from where I stood, what it cost her. Not a sound, just her jaw, set hard, and her hand white-knuckled on the stick. I brought her a better stick the next day. One I'd cut from a young ash, dense grain, balanced for her height. I left it inside the door without saying anything about it. She used it. The man who'd cut the axle. I went in the 3rd week. I took 2 men with me, Cousin Charging Eagle and an older man named Many Wounds, who was good to have nearby in situations where things might require a decision. We rode to the settlement. I found the man at the back of a trading post, drunk and loud, and I walked in and stood in front of him and told him I knew what he'd done. He got big. Men like that always get big first. Puff out, get loud, try to fill the room with noise before you can fill it with fact, he said things. I let him say them. I waited. Then I told him what I had, and what I knew, and what would happen next, and I watched the bigness go out of him, like air, out of a bladder. He gave back what was left of the money. Not all of it. He'd spent some, enough to matter. And I told him what would happen to him if he was in that territory again. And I said it quietly and without heat. Is the way to say things you mean. He believed me. They always believe you when you're quiet about it. I rode back with the money and the Bible. The Bible had been sold to the post owner, who gave it back without argument once I explained. The pots were gone, traded off already, but the money and the Bible were what she'd care about. I didn't think about why I knew that. I just knew it. I gave her the things at evening, when the light was long and gold through the lodge opening. I held out the cloth with the money rolled in it and the Bible on top, and she looked at them, and then looked at me, and I watched something happen in face that I didn't have a name for right then. It wasn't gratitude exactly. It was bigger than that and quieter than that, she said. How? I went and got them. That man. He won't be a problem. She looked at the Bible a long time, ran her thumb across the cover. It was worn at the corners, the leather softened by years of handling, and I understood then that it had been her mother's or her grandmother's, something carried a long way. She didn't cry, she just held it. Then she said, "Thank you, Tatanka Hongska." It was the first time she'd used my name. She'd been careful about the sound of it. I'd heard her practicing quietly, getting the stops right. She got them right. I didn't say anything. I went and sat across the fire and smoked, and she sat with her Bible and neither of us spoke. And it was a good silence, the kind that has weight and warmth in it. She should have left as soon as the leg held. I knew that. My sister knew that. The proper thing, the sensible thing, was to arrange her passage to the settlement, and from there west to her sister's. I had the means. I knew people who traveled that route. It would have taken me an afternoon to set up. I did not set it up. I told myself I was waiting until she was stronger. Her leg was healing clean, but I told myself she needed another week, and then another. I found reasons. The weather turned sharp. The route was better in dry conditions. Her sister's letter, which she'd read to me, she'd offered and I hadn't refused, said no particular hurry, Come when you're ready. I was not honest with myself for a while. She started helping around the camp. That was her doing, not mine or my sister's. She watched how things were done and then she did them, correctly, carefully without making a fuss about learning. She ground corn the right way, after watching once. She learned which plants Red Leaf Woman used for what. She asked questions in a way I respected, directly, without apology, and she listened to the answer the full way through before asking another. The children liked her. Children are honest judges. They don't like people who are performing kindness. They can smell it. With Eliza, they just liked her, came and sat near her, let her touch their hair. An old woman in the camp, Half Moon, who had not spoken warmly to a white woman in 30 years, brought Eliza a piece of smoked meat one morning and set it in front of her and walked away. That was Half Moon's whole way of saying what she thought. I watched all of this. Shh. There was an evening in the 5th week when I came back late from riding the range of the camp's territory, checking a fence line that one of my men had reported down. Eliza was sitting outside, the ash stick across her knees, watching the dark come in from the east. The sky was doing something, the last of the sun, pulling orange out of the clouds over the western hills, while the east was already deep blue, going purple. It was the kind of sky that makes a man stop riding just to look. I stopped and looked. She didn't hear me come up. She was just sitting with that sky, her face open in a way I hadn't seen before. All the jaw gone, the tight holding on gone. Just her face taking in the light. She had a small scar at her temple from where the wagon had cut her. I knew it was there. I'd cleaned it myself that first night. But in that light, it just looked like part of her face, something that had always been there. I must have made a sound, or the horse did, because she turned. I was watching the sky, she said, embarrassed. Just explaining. It's worth watching, I said. She moved to the side of where she was sitting, making room. Not saying anything, just making room. I got down from the horse and tied it and sat. We watched the rest of it together, the orange going pink, going gray. First stars coming. Neither of us talked. The night sounds started up, crickets and something far off, a coyote once, and then quiet again. It was cold, and I could feel the cold, and I didn't move. When she spoke, it was so quiet I almost missed it. She said, I don't want to go to my sister's. I didn't answer right away. I sat with that. Then I said, where do you want to go? And she turned and looked at me, full and direct. Those snow sky eyes steady in the near dark. She said, I think I'm already there, see. I want to tell you what I felt. But feeling was never the language I was built for. I'll tell you what I did. I sat there a while longer. The stars were coming out properly by thick in the east. And I watched them, and I felt something in my chest that I had not felt in a long time. Something I'd decided after my wife died that I was done feeling. Not grief. The opposite. The specific ache of something you thought was gone coming back, I said. There are things you should understand about what my life is, about what this would mean. I know what it would mean, she said. People will say things. People say things anyway. A small sound that might have been a laugh. I've been managing people saying things about me my whole life. I looked at her. I have nothing to offer you but this camp and my name, I said. I am not a young man. My world is not easy. It is not what you came west expecting, she said. I came west expecting my husband's cousin's wagon to get me to my sister's. Plans change. She paused. What I didn't expect was someone to come back for me. I didn't expect that. I didn't say anything. She reached over in the dark, and her hand found mine, not groping for it, just found it, like she'd known where it was. Fingers closed around mine, and she held on, not desperate, not soft, firm. The way you hold something you're choosing. Give me your name, she said. I'll be careful with it. We were married that autumn by the custom of my people. Red Leaf Woman performed it, which meant more to me than any paper. And by the word of a traveling preacher the following spring, which meant more to Eliza than she admitted but which she wanted. and I understood wanting it. Her sister sent a letter. Hurt feelings, then questions, then, slowly, something like acceptance. Eliza wrote back every month. That was her business. I let it be hers. The man from the settlement, the one who'd cut the axle, was found 2 winters later, dead of causes unrelated to me. I heard and felt nothing particular. I taught Eliza to ride properly, not the side saddle nonsense but the real way. And she learned fast and without complaint, and she was a year my not good enough that my men would not have laughed at her if they hadn't liked her, which they did. She learned more of my language than I expected. Not fluent, never fluent, but enough to say what she needed and to understand what was said around her, which mattered for her safety and her standing both. She kept the ash walking stick, long after the leg was healed, and she didn't need it. I asked her once why. She said, "Because you made it for me." I said, "I just cut a branch." She looked at me with those sky eyes and she said, "You cut it for my height, and you smoothed it for my grip, and you left it at the door so I wouldn't have to ask." She let that sit. "You didn't cut that for yourself." I didn't say anything. She reached up and put her hand flat on my chest, not reaching, just resting it there. And she said, "You have been taking care of people your whole life, and nobody has ever said that plainly to you, have they?" I thought about that a long time. No, nobody had. "Let me see," she said. "You are a good man, Tatahanka Hongska. You were good before I came. You are good in ways most people never see, because you do not need them to see. I cannot tell you what that did to me. I won't try." She is asleep when I am telling you this. 40 years have passed. I am an old man and she is an old woman, and the world has changed around us past. I could have described to that younger self, crouching by a sawed-off wheel in the grass. The stick is in the corner of the room. She moved it inside years ago. I never asked why. Outside, the sky is doing what it does before snow, that flat, even light that makes everything quiet. I noticed it through the window just now, and I thought of the first time I saw her face go open, like that, watching the sky. Sitting with her in the dark and feeling something come back that I'd shut away. I got up once to put more wood on the fire. I passed where she was sleeping, and I stopped. The way you stop sometimes for no reason, just to look. Her face in sleep has the jaw gone again, the holding on gone. Just her face, same as it's always been. The scar at the temple she doesn't think about anymore. I went and put the wood on the fire. Came back and sat in this chair. She breathed. "The snow is coming, I can feel it. We'll be all right." I keep coming back to the wheel. 40 years, and I still think about it sometimes. Not with anger anymore. Anger is a young man's fuel, and I burned through mine a long time ago. Think about it, the way you think about the particular thing that cracked the world open and let something in. The wheel was the crack. Eliza was what came through. She would tell you that's a strange way to think about it. She'd say, "You found me on the road. That's all. You found me on the road and you brought me home. And that's the whole story." She's not wrong. But she's not all the way right either. I spent a long time before that day being useful to people, and being respected by people, and being needed by people, and all of that was real, and none of it, not one piece of it, was the same as being seen. There's a difference. You can be the man the camp depends on, and still lie down at night with a space beside you that nobody fills. Not really. You can do everything right, carry everything that needs carrying, make every hard decision that needs making, and still not have one person who looks at you and sees the whole of you and decides, freely decides, the full knowledge of what you are, that you're worth staying for. That's what Eliza did. She saw the whole thing, and she stayed. There was a particular winter, our third together, that tested what we were. It was bad. The cold came early, and the game had moved, and there were months when I was stretched thin, between feeding the camp and keeping peace with 2 neighboring groups who were both hungry and both looking at my people's stores with different eyes. I was making decisions that kept some people fed and maybe didn't keep others fed as well as I'd have liked. And those decisions have a cost, and some of the cost lands on the man who made them in the form of silence from men he respects, or words said at a distance meant to carry back to him. I was tired in a way I couldn't fix with sleep. Eliza knew it. She didn't ask. She just changed how she moved around me. Not smaller, not careful, but different. She took things off my hands that she didn't need to take. When I was up in the night, she was up too, not to talk, just present. Getting water, stoking the fire, sitting in the dark without making the dark bigger. One night she said, "Tell me what you're carrying," I said. "It would take till morning," she said. "I'm not going anywhere," I told her. All of it. The numbers, the names, the decisions, and the weight of them, the things I'd done, and the things I'd failed to do. I talked in a way I hadn't talked since before my first wife died. All the way through. Nothing held back. It took a long time. She listened the whole way, not making it easier with comfort sounds or questions, just taking it in. When I was done, she said, "You made the right calls." I said, "2 families went to bed hungry for 3 weeks, and the other 15 didn't, and nobody died." She looked at me straight. "Those are the right calls. It doesn't mean they feel like the right calls. Those are different things." I sat with that, she said. "You are a good chief, not a lucky one, a good one. You know the difference in what it costs," I said. "I know what it costs." "Yes," she said. "And you pay it anyway. That's what makes you what you are." My cousin Charging Eagle, who had ridden with me since we were young men, told me once, years after Eliza came, that I was different since her. I asked him how. He thought about it. He was not a man who said things carelessly. He said, "Before you were like a man carrying a weight alone. You carried it well. Nobody could say you didn't carry it well. But you were alone with it now." He paused. "Now it is the same weight and you still carry it. But you don't look like you're carrying it alone." I thought about that for a long time. He was right. There is a thing that happens when one good person knows the full weight of what you carry and does not flinch from it, does not reduce it, does not tell you it's lighter than it is, does not look away from the hard parts, just stays, sees it all and stays. Something that was braced in me, the deep bracing of a man who has learned to expect that he does his heaviest work without witness. Something in bracing let go. I didn't know it was there until it moved. Red Leaf Woman, my sister, took her time coming around. I want to be honest about that. She helped from the first day, because she is the kind of woman who helps. But helping and trusting are different things, and trust came slower. The thing that turned it, as best I could see, was the business with Half Moon's granddaughter. The girl, she was 12, teen, fell ill. In the second summer Eliza was with us. Badly ill, the kind of sick that makes old people start saying goodbye before the dying is done. Eliza sat with that child for 5 days. She slept on the ground beside her. She argued with me, plainly. Without heat, but without backing down either. About one of the things I'd decided to try. She'd read about a different treatment. In a book she had, told me I was wrong. I told her I had more experience with this kind of illness. She said that was possible, but that didn't make me right about this. She was right about this. The girl recovered. Leaf Woman came to me the following week and said, "Your wife." I said, "Yes." She said, "She is good." It was 4 words and it was everything. That was how my sister talked. 4 words from Red Leaf Woman weighed more than a speech from anyone else. The land changed around us over those years. Changed in ways I had seen coming and ways I hadn't. There were more white settlements, more roads, the old life, the wide life, the life that moved with the season, got smaller, pushed in at the edges. I am not going to talk about all of that. Some things are too large for one man's account, and I have no interest in making my own story small inside someone else's larger story of those years. I'll say only, it was hard and we kept going, and the people I was responsible for are still here, most of them. Eliza never pretended it wasn't what it was. She didn't soften it to make herself feel better about being white. I respected that. She was honest about it the way she was honest about everything. Plainly, without drama, without taking more than her share of the blame or less. She said once, "I can't fix what my people did. I can only be what I am where I am," I said. "That's all any of us can do." Is it enough? I thought about it. It has to be. Children. We had 3, 2 sons and a daughter. The first son died in his 2nd year of a fever. There's nothing more to say about that. It happened and we carried it. The second son is grown now with children of his own. He looks like me around the eyes and like Eliza around the mouth. He is steady and curious and has his mother's way of listening all the way through before he speaks. He is also, this pleases me, a better writer than I was at his age. Our daughter is the fierce one. She has her grandfather's temper. My father's skipped me and came down clean. She is also the smartest person I know, including me, and she is generous with that intelligence. In the way smart people sometimes aren't. She came back here last spring with her husband and her 2 children, and she sat with me in the evening and asked me to tell her things I knew. I talked for 3 nights. She listened and asked questions and wrote some of it down. Her mother sat with us sometimes, not saying much, just present. On the last night, my daughter said, "You two are something." Eliza said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You're like, you fit together so right it looks like you always did. Like the world didn't have to work hard to put you together." Eliza looked at me. I said, "The world worked plenty hard." Eliza said, "A wheel had to fall off a wagon." My daughter looked between us, waiting. "Long story," I said. Eliza smiled in the way that means she is letting me have something. The ash stick. I want to come back to it because it matters. I have thought about why I cut it for her. I've had 40 years to think about it. Her stick she carved herself was good. It was good enough. She didn't need mine. But I looked at hers, and I knew her height now and her grip, and I thought, it could be better. It could be exactly right for her instead of close enough. I didn't think past that. I just went and cut it. That's the truth of how it started. I wasn't thinking about what it meant. I wasn't declaring anything. I just thought, that stick could be better. I can make it better. So I did. Eliza understood it before I did. That's often how it's gone between us. She sees a thing clear before I find the words for it. She doesn't make me say the words. She just lives in the understanding of the thing and gives me time to come around to my own words for it when I'm ready. That patience is one of the things I am most grateful for in her. I am not a fast talker about what is inside me. I never have been. She never needed me to be. She just needed me to mean it. I meant it. There is a saying in my language. I won't try to give it to you exactly. The shape of it gets lost. But it means something like, the man who carries the people on his back still needs someone who knows his name. I heard that when I was young, and I thought I understood it. I didn't understand it. I understand it now. The snow is coming down properly now. I can hear it against the window, soft and steady, building up. The light in the room is the particular color it gets when the whole world outside is white. A light that has no shadows in it, just the same pale everywhere, and quiet in a way that feels deliberate. Eliza is still sleeping. Her breathing is even. I got up once more to check the fire, and I stood by the window and looked out at the snow covering everything. The fence, the yard, the old ash tree we planted the year our daughter was born. The tree is tall now, full grown. I looked at it and I thought, I did that. We did that. There are things in the world that are here because we were here. I am an old man. My bones tell me this every morning, cold or warm. I have outlived people I loved and done things I regret and made decisions I stand behind even when they cost me. And I have watched the world change and changed with it as much as I could and held on to what mattered when the change came too fast. I have been a chief and a husband and a father and a son and a man who crouched in the grass next to a sawed-off wheel and made a decision without knowing it was the biggest one he'd make. I lifted the wagon. I brought her home. Everything that followed came from that, and everything that followed was good. Not easy, not smooth, not without its hard passages, but good in the deep way, the real way. Treat. The way that means when you lie down at night there is not that empty space. There is her breathing. There is the weight of her beside you. There is the knowledge, settled in your bones like marrow, that one good person knows the full weight of what you are and chose it. Keeps choosing it. That's not a small thing. That might be the largest thing. The snow is coming down. The fire is good. My wife breathes in the next room. 40 years, and I would lift that wagon every time. I should tell you about the summer the two men came. Eliza had been with us 4 years by then. She was known in the camp, known in the settlement down the road, known well enough that when she went to trade, people dealt with her straight. That matters more than it sounds. A woman alone, a white woman living with a Lakota camp, people had ideas. Most of them kept their ideas to themselves, or said them where they thought wouldn't carry back. These two men didn't bother with that. They rode in one afternoon when I was away from the camp, out with Charging Eagle looking at a section of grazing land we were considering. Eliza told me about it that evening, in a voice that was level and careful. The voice she used when she was telling me something that had frightened, but that she didn't want me to see had frightened her. Two men, strangers. They came in friendly, asking about the camp, about who ran it. When Eliza answered them, when she answered in English, and it was clear from her manner and her presence that she was the chief's wife, the friendliness changed. One of them said something about what kind of woman lives with the Indians. The other one laughed. She told them to leave. They didn't leave right away. They stood there and talked at her while she stood in front of the lodge entrance with her back straight and her face still. They left eventually, but they took their time. She told me all of it that evening, and then she said, "I want you to know I wasn't scared." I looked at her. "Well," she said, "I was scared, but I didn't let them see it," I said. "That was the right thing." "I know." She paused. "I also want you to know that whatever happens, whatever people say, I don't regret this. I want to be clear about that. I didn't want you thinking I was telling you so you'd feel badly. I was telling you so you'd know." I thought about what to do about those two men. They were still in the area. There was a camp of settlers 2 miles on that they were riding with. I thought about it carefully, the way I thought about anything that touched on my people's safety and my own standing. Acting too hard could make things worse. Acting too soft meant it would happen again. I went with Charging Eagle and 2 other men the following morning. I didn't threaten, didn't raise my voice. I rode in and asked for the men spurred by description, and when they came out, I looked at them for a long moment, and then I said plainly, "My wife, you will not speak to her again." One of them started to say something. I looked at him. He stopped. I let the silence sit as long as it needed to sit. Then I turned my horse and I rode away, and my men rode with me, and nothing else was said. The settlement moved on 3 days later. I don't know if those 2 men were part of it. It doesn't matter. I had said what needed saying, in the way that needed saying it, and the matter was done. Eliza asked me what happened when I came home. I said, "I talked to them." She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you." I said, "You don't have to thank me for that." She said, "I know. I'm doing it anyway, trainer." There was a thing Eliza did in the evenings that I noticed long before I let myself think about what it meant. She kept track, not of debts, not in that way, but she kept track of people. She knew when Half Moon's hip was bad, and she brought her things without being asked. She knew which of the children in camp had trouble learning, and she sat with them with the same straight-backed patience she'd applied to getting own leg back under her. She knew when my sister was tired, and she took on more so my sister could rest. She knew, and this is the one I think about most, she knew when I was at the far edge of what I had to give, and she never, not once, asked for more than I had left. I had known people in my life who noticed others. Generous people, good people. There's a difference between noticing in general and tracking in particular. Eliza tracked in particular. Each person as themselves, each person's specific weight and need and gift. I asked her once since where that came from. She thought about it, the way she thought about questions she took seriously. She said, "My mother, she kept everyone in her head that way. She always knew. When I was little, I thought it was just. That was how mothers were. Then I grew up and I saw it wasn't. Most people don't do that. My mother just did," I said. "Your mother sounds like someone I would have respected." Eliza smiled. "She would have liked you. She appreciated a man who did the work quietly." I said, "What does that mean?" "It means you don't need people to see you doing the good thing. You just do it." She paused. "Most men need the audience, you don't." "I thought about that," I said. "I notice when the right people see." She looked at me, the full straight look. She said, "I see." "I want to tell you about the ceremony. When we married in the Lakota way first. Red Leaf Woman presided. It was winter. Early winter. First snow just down. The ground cold but not yet hard. We stood together in the presence of the people, and my sister spoke the words, and we made promises that matter. The real ones. The ones about endurance and care, and the particular faithfulness of showing up. I had done this once before, with my first wife. I loved her. I want to say that clearly. She was a good woman, and her death was a loss that I carried for years without putting it down. But this was different. I don't mean it was bigger, I mean it had different textures. With my first wife, I was young, and I loved her the way you love when you are young. Fully, without the knowledge of how much you can lose. With Eliza, I was a man who knew exactly what he was doing. I knew the cost of love. I knew how it ends, eventually. I knew what it meant to open back up after loss. I chose it anyway. Standing there in the first snow with this woman beside me, she was not what I had expected from any direction. She was not soft. She was not grateful in that diminished way, the way of someone who believes they have been rescued and owes a debt. She was grateful the way a strong person is grateful. From a position of her own standing, acknowledging a gift received between equals. She stood beside me in the snow, and when the words were said, she turned to me and she was not crying. Her jaw was set, and her eyes were steady, and she looked at me like a woman who has made up her mind and means it. I looked back at her the same way. That was how we started. She learned to bead. I didn't know she was learning until my sister showed me a piece of work Eliza had done. A pattern on a piece of hide, Lakota style, worked careful and exact. It wasn't fast work and it wasn't advanced work, but it was honest work, kind, a person does when they want to learn, rather than wanting to look like they've learned. I picked it up and looked at it. And I thought about the fact that she had done this without making any announcement about it. Without asking for credit, she had simply done it, learned the thing, added it quietly to who she was, put it down and went and found her, and I said, "You've been working with Red Leaf Woman," she said. She offered to teach me. I didn't want to make a thing of it in case I turned out to be no good, I said. "You're good." She waved that off. I said, "I mean it. Red Leaf Woman doesn't teach someone who isn't worth teaching. She has walked away from students before." Eliza was quiet for a moment. I said, "She never walked away from you." I watched her take that in. She turned toward me, and there it was, the thing in her face. The thing I'd first seen the night I gave her back her Bible. That wide, quiet look that was bigger than gratitude and quieter than gratitude. I had learned by then what it meant. It meant, "You see me, I saw her," I said. "I watch you, you know," she said. "I know, you never stop," I said. "Learning, paying attention, showing up, you never stop," she said. "Why would I stop?" I said, "Most people do." She looked at me, and then she took a step forward, and she put her hand flat on my chest the way she did sometimes. And she said, "Then most people aren't married to you." I didn't know what to say to that. I put my hand over hers and held it there. The last story I want to tell you is a small one. Last summer, early morning. One of those mornings in late June when the air is still cool, but the Light comes in like fire, golden and sideways, and every blade of grass has a shadow. I was up early, the way I'm always up early, and I had my coffee, and I was standing outside, watching the light work across the land. I heard her before I saw her, the soft sound of her moving in the house. Then the door, then her step beside me. She put her arm through mine and leaned against my side, and we stood there, watching the light move. The long shadows shortening as the sun climbed, the dew burning off, the old ash tree coming into its color, going from gray to green in about 10 minutes as the sun hit it properly. She said nothing for a long time. I said nothing. Then she said, "This is my favorite thing," I said. "The morning," she said. "Standing here with you in the morning." We kept watching. The light kept moving. I think about that morning sometimes, when the hard things need thinking through, when the weight is heavy, or the cold comes in, or the world does something I can't fix. I hold that morning in my mind. The light, arm through mine, the tree going green, the warmth of her beside me. It doesn't fix the hard things, but it tells me what the hard things are for, what they're in service of. Why you keep carrying what needs a carrying, for this, for the arm through yours, and the morning light and the person who chose to be there. Breathing is slower now. The deep, steady breathing of sleep, the kind you only reach when you feel safe. The snow has put about an inch down on everything outside. The ash tree is white-shouldered. The fence has a white line on every post. I am going to let this fire work a little longer, and then I am going to go lie down beside my wife. I am old, and my joints tell me about the weather before the clouds do, and I have aches that don't entirely leave. And I know what waits. For both of eventually, because I have always been honest about what waits. Right now the fire is good, and the snow is clean outside, and she is breathing in the next room, and I am not finished yet. Not even close to finished. She would laugh at that. She'd say, "Of course you're not. She knows me. She has always known me. I lifted the wagon, and she gave me the rest of my life." That is the whole of it. That is all.